Well, congratulations. You've just applied for the least glamorous, most backstabbing, most please don't die before lunch job in the entire medieval world. It's not like the cool movies or the epic video games. There's no fancy white hood, no secret guild with shiny weapons, no dramatic leap into haystacks. There's just you probably a half-starved peasant with a bad haircut, a rusty dagger, and zero training. And guess what? Nobody even calls you an assassin. To them, you're just that shady person my lord paid 2 coins to deal with the problem. And the problem is usually someone way more important than you. A duke, a baron, maybe even a king. In other words, someone with enough guards to turn you into a human pincushion if you make even the tiniest mistake. But let's back up. How did you even get here? The hiring process, shadier than a dark alley. There's no job ad pinned to the castle gate saying, help wanted professional assassin. Good pay. Must bring own knife. No. It doesn't work like that, Dot, usually. You're just a lowly thief or a desperate soldier with debts you can't pay. Maybe you've been caught stealing bread too many times. Or you owe money to someone who doesn't take "I'm broke" as an answer. That's when some rich, smug noble slides up to you with an offer. He whispers something like, how would you like to earn? Extra coin. Sounds easy, right? It's not, because the extra coin is always in exchange for something risky. They want you to remove a rival. And by remove, they don't mean politely ask them to leave. They mean you're supposed to make that person permanently unavailable. And before you even think about saying no, remember you're broke, hungry. Maybe your family is starving too. You don't have a choice. So you nod and accept Dot and congratulations again. You've just been hired as a medieval assassin. Spoiler, your employer will probably betray you. Here's the thing about medieval politics. No one trusts anyone, not even the people who hire assassins. In fact, especially the people who hire assassins, your noble employer, he's already planning to get rid of you after the job. Why? Because loose ends are dangerous. He doesn't want anyone knowing he ordered the hit. So once you've done your little mission, don't expect a warm thank you. Expect a sword in your back, or if you're lucky, just no payment. Dot. So the first lesson of being a medieval assassin is simple. You're a disposable, no cool gear, just rust and regretto. And let's talk about your equipment. Forget those fancy hidden blades you've seen in games. What you have is a knife, that's it. A plain, slightly rusty knife you probably stole from a kitchen. Maybe you can afford a short sword, but it's heavy and clumsy. Poison? Sure, if you can find some, but good luck testing it. And don't even dream of silencers if you want quiet. You're using your hands and hope no one hears the struggle. Rooftops? You think you're climbing those stone castles like some graceful cat? No, you're slipping on loose tiles, praying you don't fall into a manure cart. Medieval rooftops aren't parkour friendly. They're death traps. And disguises. Forget it. You don't have some magical costume that makes you invisible. You're just another face in a crowded, plague-ridden street. No glory, just guilt. And here's the kicker. No one respects you. Not the villagers, not the guards, not even your employer. You're not a mysterious shadow in the night. You're a thug, a tool, a whisper no one wants to acknowledge. Even the person you're sent to deal with probably doesn't see you coming. They might even look at you with shock or fear. Sometimes they beg, sometimes they fight back. Either way, it's not heroic. It's messy, sad, and over before you even think about what you're doing. And when it's done, there's no parade, no medal, no hidden treasure waiting for you. Just a small pouch of coins if your employer decides to keep his word. And you're always hungry, remember, you're still poor. You might have just risked your life for a few coins, but they'll barely buy you a stale loaf of bread. You're still sleeping in a flea-infested bed in some nameless inn, still dodging guards who might recognize you, still wondering if your employer will send someone after you. This isn't a career. It's a slow, miserable countdown. And about that brotherhood, maybe you've heard rumors that there's a guild, a secret order of assassins who live by honor and have cool rituals. Nope, not for you. If those even exist, they're not inviting some random peasant with bad aim. You're freelance, alone, and you know what alone means in medieval times? No backup, no friends. Just you, your nerves, and your increasingly bad luck. So why? Do it because you're desperate. Because medieval life doesn't give you many choices. You're either a farmer breaking your back in the fields, a soldier marching to someone else's war, or this. At least this pays slightly better, maybe. If you survive. So yes. Welcome to the worst job interview ever. No parchment, no signature. Just a whisper in the dark. Can you do this? And you, with an empty stomach and nothing to lose, say yes. But don't fool yourself. You're not Ezio Auditore. You're not a noble warrior in the shadows. You're just another half-starved peasant with a knife, hoping this time you'll live long enough to spend the money. And now, take a deep breath, because this was just the beginning. You've said yes to the job. The first step is over, but the real nightmare, that starts on your first mission. Close your eyes and imagine it. The cold street, the sound of footsteps, and the weight of regret you haven't even earned yet. So you think you're about to start some grand training to become a legendary assassin. Maybe you're picturing a secret courtyard with robed masters teaching you the art of the silent strike. You imagine spinning swords, whispering techniques, and wise teachers with mysterious scars. Yeah. No. This is the medieval world. There are no official assassin schools. There are no scrolls filled with hidden knowledge. There's just a random old man who's survived long enough to call himself a teacher. And honestly, even he doesn't know what he's doing half the time. Lesson 1, don't die in the first 5 seconds here. Training starts with the most basic advice. Don't die immediately. That's it. That's the whole course. Your so-called mentor probably gives you a dull dagger, a torn cloak, and says something like, if you can stab him before he stabs you, you're doing great. No fancy drills, no special moves. Just a very simple philosophy. Stay alive. How do you stay alive? By avoiding fights. By staying invisible. By running faster than the guards chasing you. That's the first and only real lesson you'll get. Sneaking. Practice in filth next. You learn how to blend in. Sounds easy, right? Well, remember, this is medieval Europe. Blending in means standing around in a plague-filled street without throwing up. It means walking through muddy alleys that smell like every bad decision humanity ever made. Your teacher will say, don't look suspicious. How do you do that? By acting like a normal peasant. So you sit on a barrel, chew some stale bread, and try not to look like someone planning murder. Sometimes they make you follow a random person in the market for practice. If you trip on a loose stone or step into manure well, lesson failed. Try again tomorrow. And yes, you will step in manure. A lot. Rooftops. More like death traps. Maybe you think you'll learn to run across rooftops like a graceful cat. Wrong. Again, climbing medieval buildings is like trying to scale a pile of sharp rocks held together with spit. The tiles are loose. The wood is rotten. One wrong move and you're falling into the street where you'll probably land on someone's. Angry goat. Your teacher won't help you. He'll just shout, don't fall. As if that magically makes it safer. So you're training for rooftop work, trial and error. Mostly error. Weapons training is a joko and weapons. Let's talk about weapons. You don't get a personal armory. You get whatever cheap blade your employer can afford. Maybe a dagger, maybe a short sword that's seen better days. It's probably dull, and if you want poison, forget it. Poison is expensive, hard to make, and half the time it kills the wrong person anyway. So, your weapon training is basically this. Hold a knife. Pointy end goes into the target. Don't drop it. That's it. That's your masterclass. Learning too. Run away gracefully, another important skill you're taught. How to escape. Because let's be honest, you're not going to win in a fair fight. If you're caught, you're dead. So your training is mostly running through muddy alleys, running over bridges, running through crowds of shouting villagers. You even practice hiding in weird places behind market stalls, under wagons, even inside empty barrels. If it fits, it works. Basically, you're training to be a really fast coward. And that's considered a good thing. Blending in with the sick now, here's a fun part of training. Sometimes, to avoid suspicion, you have to blend in with plague victims. Yes, actual plague victims. Your teacher will tell you to walk slowly, slump your shoulders, and cough in a very convincing way. You're supposed to look so sick that guards don't even want to come near you. Of course, if you're unlucky, you'll actually catch something while pretending. But hey, that's just part of the job. And don't forget the smells. Medieval towns smell like rot, waste, and hopelessness. If you can survive hours of standing in that stench without throwing up, you've passed another lesson. Zero strategy, all improvisation. You might think there's some big, clever plan for each mission. Nope. Your teacher will say, follow the target. Wait for the right moment, then do it. That's the whole strategy. No maps, no detailed plans. Just guesswork and hoping no one's watching. If something goes wrong, well, too bad. Except fire spreads unpredictably. It catches things you didn't plan for. Suddenly, the entire street is burning. People are screaming. And you've accidentally turned a simple job into a disaster that everyone will remember. So yes, fire works. But it also works too well. Improvised weapons. Because you're broke most of the time, you're not even using proper weapons. You're using whatever you can find. A rock, a stick, maybe a kitchen knife. Yes, you're an assassin. Armed with household items. Very professional. And guess what? Improvised weapons are even more unreliable. They break. They slip. They fail at the worst possible moment. The weight of guilt. And the noise, here's the other thing they don't tell you about weapons. They're loud in your head. Every clang, every scream, every noise echoes. Even if you survive the job, you hear it later when you're trying to sleep. So while the weapon is in your hand for only a few seconds, the memory of using it stays with you. And it's heavy. No cool gadgets. Oh, and let's kill one more dream. There were no hidden gadgets. No smoke bombs, no grappling hooks. No spring-loaded blades that magically appear from your sleeve. That's all fantasy. In reality, you had a knife, maybe a rope, and a very long list of regrets. So much effort for so little when you step back. And think about it, all these weapons are just different flavors of the same problem. None of them are clean, none of them are easy, and none of them guarantee success. You go through all this trouble sharpening dull blades, brewing risky poisons, learning to aim a crossbow that barely works, just to deal with one person. And the funniest part, that one person probably deserved it. Yes. After all the stress, the danger, the running, the noise, the target was usually some rich, smug noble who made enemies on purpose. They probably had it coming. So much effort. So much risk. For one person who likely wasn't even worth the trouble. And yet, here you are, holding a rusty dagger, hoping it doesn't break in your hand. Welcome to the life of a medieval assassin. So, it's finally here, your big day. The day you officially Do the job you've been trained for. You wake up in your flea-infested bed, stretch your sore muscles, and remember, oh right, today you're going to sneak through filth-filled streets to deal with someone without no pressure. You try to act calm. You even tell yourself it's just another day, just another job. But deep down, you know, it's not. Today's the day your life officially goes from bad to worse. The streets. A maze of misery. You step outside and immediately regret it. Medieval streets are disgusting. Mud mixed with waste, broken carts blocking narrow alleys, and puddles you really don't want to step in. People are everywhere. Merchants shouting about their rotting vegetables, children running barefoot through the muck, and beggars coughing in corners. The air smells like a mix of smoke, sweat, and something that probably died a week ago. Your target is out there somewhere, moving through this chaos. And you're supposed to follow them without being noticed. Easy, right? Except it isn't, because every step you take squishes loudly in the mud. Every time you try to stay close, you almost bump into someone carrying a basket of fish, and the rats. Oh, the rats. They're everywhere, darting between your feet, chewing on scraps, reminding you that in this world, even they probably have a better life than you. Tailing the target, you spot your target. Some rich noble, dressed in fine clothes that somehow avoid the dirt you're covered in. He's surrounded by a few guards, but not too many. Your job is to follow quietly, close enough to keep track, far enough that no one notices. Sounds simple, but remember, you're in a crowd. You can't just stand there staring like a creep. So you pretend to shop at stalls, glance at random things you can't afford, and move when he moves. And of course, people keep getting in your way. A drunk stumbles into you. A child tugs on your cloak, asking for coins. A vendor tries to sell you questionable meat. And for a moment, you lose sight of the target. Panic. Then you spot him again, turning down another alley. You sigh with relief. Still in the game. Rooftop climbing. Less cool than it sounds. Eventually, your target enters a less crowded street. Maybe you think it's time to get a better view. Maybe you think, I'll climb a building like a master assassin. So you find a wall with some loose stones and start climbing. Bad idea. The stones wobble. Your hands slip. Your boots scrape noisily. And when you finally drag yourself onto the rooftop, you're greeted by more filth. Old straw, bird droppings, and yes, more rats. You crouch low, trying not to make a sound. The rooftop creaks. Tiles shift under your weight. One wrong step, and you'll either fall or make so much noise that the whole street looks up. And if you think rooftops give you a great view, they don't. Smoke from chimneys blocks your sight, and the angles are all wrong. So now you're tired, dirty, and still barely keeping track of your target, the sneeze problem, and then it happens. You feel it coming. That tiny, itchy tickle in your nose. You try to fight it. You hold your breath. You press your finger under your nose. You do everything to stop it, but medieval air is full of dust, smoke, and who knows. What else. You sneeze. Loudly. A guard looks up. A few people glance your way. You freeze. Maybe they didn't see you clearly. Maybe they think it was just a cat, but now your heart is racing. Because in this line of work, even a sneeze can get you caught. The waiting game sometimes. The job isn't even quick. You might follow a target for hours, waiting for the right moment. Maybe they stop at a market. Maybe they talk to someone in the square. Maybe they go into a tavern where you can't do anything without half the town watching. So you wait. And waiting is worse than doing. You're tense the whole time, pretending to be casual. Leaning on a wall, sitting on a barrel, acting like you belong. Meanwhile, your mind is screaming. Is this the moment? Should I move now? What if someone sees? What if I fail? The perfect moment finally, the target wanders into a quieter alley, fewer people, fewer guards. This is it. Your chance. You move in slowly. Every step feels louder than it should. You grip your weapon, maybe that rusty dagger from training. Your hands are sweaty. You get closer, closer. The target doesn't notice then, just as you're about to act. A dog starts barking, or someone opens a window, or a random drunk stumbles into the alley, and you freeze, pretending you're just another passerby. The moment is gone. You'll have to try again later. The backup plan. Improvising. When the perfect plan fails, you improvise. Maybe you spill something so the target slips. Maybe you create a distraction so the guards wander off. Maybe you fake an argument with a merchant so no one looks at what you're really doing. Improvising is messy, it's risky, and it almost never works smoothly, but that's the reality. Nothing ever goes according to plan. The noise of fear even. If you finally do it, even if the target falls quietly, you can't escape the noise in your head. Your heart pounding. Your breath coming too fast. The sound of someone gasping in surprise. It's never silent, never clean. Just a blur of motion and sound that leaves you wondering if you made a huge mistake. Escape, and then comes the hardest part, getting away. You can't just stand there. You have to vanish before anyone realizes what happened. Back into the crowd, back through the filthy streets, maybe even back onto the rooftops you hate, and the whole time you feel like everyone is staring, like every step echoes. Like any second, someone will shout, "Hey, it was them," if you mess up. And here's the final truth. If you mess up, if you're too slow, too loud, or just unlucky, everything flips. The hunter becomes the hunted, because the moment you're spotted, you're no longer an assassin, you're just a criminal. A target. And trust me, you don't want to know what happens next. So remember this simple rule. Move quietly, breathe lightly, and pray no one notices the shadow you're trying to be. Because if you messed up, congratulations, you're now the target. Payday. The magical moment when all your hard work finally pays off. At least that's what normal people experience. Farmers harvest crops, merchants sell goods, and even blacksmiths get their coins. But you're a medieval assassin. Which means payday is less of a win and more of a maybe. If you're lucky. And trust me, luck is not your strongest skill. Promise of gold always starts the same way. A noble or maybe a rich merchant whispers about a job. They offer you a pouch of gold, enough to eat for weeks, enough to maybe even buy a decent cloak that isn't full of holes. They say it so casually. Do this one thing and I'll pay you well, very well. And for a brief, shining moment, you believe them. You imagine walking into a tavern with real coins, ordering a meal that isn't spoiled, sleeping in a bed that doesn't creak like it's about to collapse. But let's be honest, you're not going to see that gold. The forgotten payment. Here's the first problem. After you do the job, your employer suddenly forgets the exact amount they promised. Oh, did I say 10 coins? I meant 5. Or maybe they claim they already paid you an opportunity. Or they act like they don't know you. And what can you do? Argue? You're just one person. They have guards. They have power. You have a rusty knife. So you swallow your anger, take whatever scraps they give you, and walk away. The employer who decides you're a loose end, sometimes they don't even bother pretending, because why would they? You know their secret. You know they ordered the job. And secrets are dangerous. So instead of handing you a bag of coins, they hand you a death sentence, a guard waiting in the alley, a friend who suddenly turns on you. Retirement? What retirement? And don't even think about retirement. There's no peaceful ending for someone in your line of work. No quiet cottage in the countryside. No growing old with dignity. The only retirement plan is dying quietly in a ditch somewhere, Dot, or if you're really, really lucky, maybe you become a legend. A name whispered in taverns, a shadow in bedtime stories, but even then, no one knows if you were real, Dot. The legend no one can prove, because that's the thing about assassins. Even the famous ones are just rumors, Dot, people might say. There was one who killed a king, or there was one who vanished after the biggest job in history, but there's no proof, no record. No one who actually knew you, Dot, in the end. You're just a ghost. A story, a name without a face, Dot, so why keep going? Why keep doing this if there's no real reward? Because you don't have another choice. You're trapped, stuck in a life that offers no way out. Too dangerous to quit, too poor to stop, Dot, and somewhere. Deep down, you still cling to that tiny hope that maybe the next job will be different. The final joke, so yes, payday comes. But rarely for you. Most of the time, someone else gets the reward, and you get the danger, the guilt, the endless running, all for a promise that was never meant to be kept. The life of a medieval assassin is many things: dirty, lonely, dangerous. But fair? Never, Dot, so remember this as you sit in some dark alley, waiting for the next whisper of a job. The only retirement plan was dying quietly in a ditch somewhere, or becoming a legend no one could prove existed. You probably imagine that being a medieval assassin gave you a certain mystique. You picture yourself as a shadow in the night, whispered about in fear. A name that made people tremble. Well, reality check, Dot, no one saw you as a mysterious figure. No one thought you were cool. To the average medieval person, you weren't a legend, you were just a thug. A sad, desperate soul doing dirty work for someone richer. Not a hero, just another. Problem people in medieval towns already had enough problems. Disease, famine, endless taxes, and random wars. They didn't have time to care about some cloaked figure skulking in alleys, Dot, if they noticed you at all. They didn't think, wow, what a dangerous assassin. They thought, ooh, another shady creep making things worse. You didn't inspire fear. You inspired annoyance. The town drunk had more respect. Think about it. The town drunk, the one who staggered through the streets every night singing badly, probably got more respect than you, Dot. At least people knew him. At least he was harmless, you. You were the stranger no one wanted around. The one parents told their kids to avoid. The one shopkeepers pretended not to see. Even beggars gave you side eye. Your reputation, sure, rumors spread. They always do. Maybe someone whispered, that one killed a merchant last winter. Or, I heard they're working for Lord so-and-so, but rumors never made you impressive. They made you suspicious. People didn't say your name in awe. They said it in a low voice, like they were talking about an unlucky person cursed with a bad life. And honestly, they weren't wrong. Guards didn't take you seriously. Even the guards didn't see you as a real threat, Dot, to them. You were just another petty criminal. Not worth the effort unless you caused real trouble. They didn't hunt you like a dangerous mastermind. They just wanted you out of the way so they could get back to their usual routine of bullying peasants and guarding gates. You weren't an exciting case. You were just a nuisance. No, one wrote ballads about you. Forget the idea of bards singing. You're a name in taverns. Bards sing about knights, heroes, and tragic lovers. They didn't waste lyrics on a hired killer. Even if you did something impressive, no one wanted to celebrate it. It was just another ugly story in an already ugly world. So while knights became legends, you became nothing. The rich didn't respect you either. And don't think the nobles you worked for respected you. They might have needed you, but they didn't admire you. To them, you were a tool, something to be used and discarded. They'd never invite you to their feasts, never treat you as an equal. At best, they pretended you didn't exist. At worst, they openly called you filth while tossing you a coin. No cool nicknames and stories. Assassins get cool names like the Shadow, the Silent Blade, or the Ghost. In reality, you'd get nicknames like that weird one or the Rat in the Alley. If you were really unlucky, people just called you, "Hey, you." So much for sounding mysterious. You couldn't even brag. You might think you could at least brag to someone, maybe a friend, maybe a fellow criminal, but no doubt talking about your work was dangerous. One slip, and you'd have the guards or worse. Another assassin on your back. So you stayed silent. Unless you said. The more people assumed the worst about you. Lonely, and forgotten you couldn't trust anyone. Couldn't make friends. Couldn't stay in one place too long. So you drifted, and the more you drifted, the less anyone remembered you. You became just another nameless face passing through. If you disappeared one day, no one would notice. No one would care. The closest thing to respect. Fear, the closest thing you got to respect was fear, and even that was shallow. Maybe someone would avoid eye contact. Maybe they'd step aside when you walked by, but it wasn't fear of you as a person. It was fear of what you represented. You were just another reminder that life was cheap and unfair, a reputation built on nothing. So yes, you had a reputation, but it wasn't the kind you wanted. It wasn't cool. It wasn't powerful. It wasn't lasting. It was the kind of reputation that made people cross the street to avoid you, then forget you existed the second you were gone. And when you're gone, because that's how it ended, eventually you'd disappear, killed on a job, betrayed by an employer, or just worn out by the life. And the next day, people would move on. No memorial. No legend. No one asking what happened to them. Just silence. So much for leaving behind a cool legacy. So you've survived the filthy streets, the noisy weapons, the endless betrayals. Or maybe you didn't. Maybe one day your luck ran out, because it always does. Now you're dead, but don't think it's over. Oh no. In the medieval world, death was just another nightmare waiting for you. The church wasn't on your side if you thought the church approved of your little side. Hustle. Surprise, you're going straight to the bad place. The priests made it very clear. Killing was a sin. Even if you told yourself, I was just following orders, they didn't care. Murder was murder. No confession could wipe that away. So every time you picked up that dagger, every time you slipped poison into a cup, you were adding another black mark to your already stained soul. You knew it. They knew it. Everyone knew it. Prayers won't save you. Sure, you could try to pray, light a candle, whisper a desperate plea, but deep down, you knew it wouldn't help. The church said you needed true repentance. You needed to confess your sins, but how could you confess without admitting what you were? And even if you did, would anyone believe you? Would they forgive you? Or would they just hand you over to the guards? So you stayed silent, and your soul stayed doomed. The fear of the bad place. Medieval people really believed in the bad place. They believed in fire that never ended, pain that never stopped, shadows that whispered your sins back to you forever. You had a lot of sins. So every time you lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling of whatever rotten room you were hiding in, you thought about it. What would it be like when you finally died? Would you open your eyes to eternal darkness, to screams? Would all the faces of the people you dealt with be waiting for you? The saints were not impressed. You might hope that maybe some saint, some holy figure, would take pity on you. Note, the saints had better things to do. They saved brave soldiers, kind mothers, poor peasants who lived good lives. You weren't even on their list. You were the cautionary tale. The one they pointed to and said, see what happens when you turn away from the light. The ultimate irony. Here's the cruelest part. You risked your soul for people who didn't even know your name. The noble who hired you, he didn't care about you. He cared about his power, his wealth. You ruined yourself for someone who probably forgot you existed the second you walked away. You didn't do it for love. You didn't do it for glory. You did it for a handful of coins that didn't even last a week. And for that, you lost everything. No fancy burial when you finally died, whether it was in a dark alley, on a rooftop, or in some forgotten inn. No one gave you a proper burial. There was no coffin, no prayers. Maybe someone dragged your body to a ditch. Maybe they buried you outside the churchyard where sinners were put, and that was it. No marker, no name, just another body the world forgot. No ghost stories about you. You might think, at least I'll haunt them. At least I'll be remembered as a ghost. But no one even bothered making ghost stories about assassins. Knights had ghosts. Kings had ghosts. Even poor farmers had a chance of becoming a sad spirit in a folk tale. But assassins, they were too ordinary, too forgettable. Even in death, you weren't special. Heaven was never an option in heaven. Let's not pretend it was waiting for you. Heaven was for people who lived with kindness, who followed the rules, who stayed pure in a dirty world. You didn't just bend the rules. You snapped them in half. So heaven was never an option. You knew. Hell was crowded, so you joined the others in the bad place. But even there, you weren't important. Hell was crowded, full of people who did far worse. Tyrants, warlords, kings who sent thousands to their deaths. Compared to them, you were just a tiny footnote. Even in eternal punishment, you were invisible.